take a close look at this diagram of the brain. Which part is responsible for vision? So you might be directed toward the back of the brain where you see the visual cortex. That's the part responsible for vision. Which part would be responsible for muscle movement? In that case, you might be looking at the top of the brain where you would see the motor cortex, because motor has to do with movement. You'll notice that the motor cortex, there are some nerve endings leading to that picture of a muscle. You'll notice that that little patch of skin has some nerve endings that are leading to what's called the somatosensory cortex. That's the area of your brain that interprets your senses. So somatosensory, your body's senses. In this case, the sense of touch. If you were to poke your finger with a tack, let's say, that sense would go to the somatosensory cortex. Your motor cortex would then respond by moving your hand away from that tack. Now sometimes that doesn't even go to your brain. Sometimes it just goes to a reflex center in your spinal cord so that you react much faster. But this is how your brain works. Afferent pathways are taking information into your brain, and efferent pathways are taking information from your brain to your muscles. We're going to do an experiment where we're putting information into your brain. And then we are going to do an experiment where we change that input and we see what and how that input affects your reaction time. So our observation is the more complex a task becomes, the longer it takes your brain to process it, the longer your reaction time. So we might turn that into a question, since that's our observation. The question is, do some tasks take longer because it takes our brain more processing time? Then we want to turn that into a hypothesis. So we might say, if complexity of task is related to a processing time, then the more complicated task will take longer to process. So we're going to design an experiment where we will start with our control. So our control should be the thing that happens the fastest, that's the most normal. And what we're going to do is we're going to have some input. In this case, it's a deck of cards. Our brain is going to process, and we're just going to put those cards into 2 stacks. And we're going to time it. Our second round, we're going to put the cards into stacks, but we're going to sort them into the red cards and the black cards. Now, if you don't have regular cards, that's fine. If you have like Uno cards, you could, again, just sort them into cards with warm colors, cards with cool colors, odd numbers, even numbers, something along those lines. The final step in our experiment is we're going to separate the cards by a suit. So we're going to separate them into 4 piles, and we're going to see how long that takes. And we're anticipating that it'll take our brain longer to process the final experiment than it would the others.